The needle gleamed under the fluorescent light, its tip sharp and cold, promising a cure that would never come. Caleb's scream echoed through the basement, raw and guttural, as his father, Pastor John, plunged the syringe into his arm. "This'll make you right, boy," John growled, his voice a mix of desperation and conviction, believing science could rewrite his son's soul. Caleb, 17, wiry and pale, collapsed against the concrete wall of their Georgia home's basement, his hazel eyes wide with betrayal. He'd always known his father's love came with conditions, but this was a violation that burned deeper than any sermon. The so-called serum, a concoction John had sourced from a shady clinic promising to fix homosexuality, coursed through Caleb's veins, leaving him dizzy, his heart pounding like a trapped animal's. By morning, Caleb's body ached, but not in the way his father had hoped. John, a towering man with a Bible-thumper's zeal, had expected the serum to make his son manly, to strip away the softness he despised, the way Caleb sketched flowers in his notebook, the way he lingered too long at the diner with Ethan, the former high school quarterback who'd come out last summer. Instead, Caleb felt a strange heat spreading through his muscles, a pulsing strength that made his skin feel too tight. He stumbled to the bathroom mirror, expecting to see a stranger, but it was still him, same sharp cheekbones, same tousled brown hair. Yet, something was different. His arms, once thin as reeds, now rippled with definition. He flexed, stunned, as his biceps swelled, not bulky but lean and powerful, like a runner's. "What the hell did you do to me?" Caleb whispered, his voice trembling. He wasn't fixed in his father's eyes. She was becoming something else entirely. The town of Willow Creek, Georgia, was a place where secrets festered behind white picket fences. Nestled in the Bible Belt, it was all sweet tea and Sunday sermons. But beneath the surface, judgment ran like a current. Caleb had grown up under its weight, hiding his sketches of Ethan's smile, the way his heart raced when their hands brushed during art class. Ethan, with his broad shoulders and easy grin, had been the golden boy until he came out. Now, he was a pariah, working late shifts at Rosie's diner to save for a one-way ticket out. Caleb slipped out of the house before dawn, his body buzzing with newfound energy. He ran to the diner, the cool September air biting his skin. Rosie's was a neon-lit haven, its checkered floors and jukebox a refuge for outcasts. Ethan was there, wiping down counters, his flannel shirt rolled up to reveal forearms corded with muscle. When he saw Caleb, his face lit up, but worry quickly clouded his green eyes. "You okay, Cal?" Ethan asked, tossing the rag aside. "You look different." Caleb hesitated, the truth too wild to spill. "Just couldn't sleep." He slid into a booth, his hands shaking. Ethan sat across from him, their knees brushing under the table. For a moment, the world outside the sermons, the stairs, the syringe didn't exist. "I'm getting out of here," Ethan said softly, his voice thick with resolve. "Atlanta, maybe. Somewhere we can be us." Caleb's chest tightened. He wanted to tell Ethan about the injection, about the strange strength coursing through him, but fear held him back. What if this cure changed him in ways he couldn't control? What if it made him someone Ethan couldn't love? That afternoon, Caleb's father called him to the church, a red brick building where John's voice boomed every Sunday. "How you feeling, son?" John asked, his eyes scanning Caleb like a scientist studying a specimen. "Fine," Caleb lied, his voice steady despite the fire in his veins. He could feel it now, a restless energy that made him want to run, to fight, to break something. John nodded, satisfied. mistaking Caleb's tension for progress. But Caleb wasn't fixed. At school, he aced a pop quiz without studying, his mind sharper than ever. During gym, he outran the track team, his legs moving with a grace he'd never known. Whispers followed him, classmates who'd once mocked his soft ways now stared in awe. Even Ethan noticed, his gaze lingering on Caleb's newly defined arms during art class. "You've been hitting the gym," Ethan teased, sketching Caleb's profile in charcoal. Caleb forced a laugh. "Something like that." But the serum wasn't just physical. Caleb's dreams grew vivid, filled with images of him and Ethan running through fields, free from Willow Creek's judgment. He woke with a clarity he'd never had, a certainty that he wasn't broken. His father's cure was backfiring, making him stronger in ways John could never understand. By week's end, Caleb confronted John in the basement. "What was in that shot?" he demanded, his voice low but fierce. John's face hardened. "A chance to save you. To make you a man." "I am a man," Caleb snapped, his fists clenched, muscles taut. "And I love Ethan. No needle's gonna change that." John's eyes widened, a flicker of fear beneath his rage. He'd expected compliance, not defiance. Caleb turned and walked out, his heart pounding but lighter than ever. He wasn't just stronger, he was unbreakable. Caleb's newfound strength wasn't just in his body, it was in his soul. He felt it in the way he held Ethan's hand at Rosie's diner, no longer caring who saw. The serum, meant to erase his love, had sharpened his resolve, like a blade honed by fire. But Willow Creek wasn't ready for Caleb's defiance. At school, rumors swirled. Pastor John's kids acting weird. Kids whispered, eyeing his lean, powerful frame. Caleb ignored them, focusing on Ethan, who'd started sketching their future together, apartments in Atlanta, late-night coffee shops, a life where they could kiss without fear. One evening, as Caleb helped Ethan close the diner, a group of guys from the football team Ethan's old teammates cornered them in the parking lot. Leading them was Jake, a linebacker with a chip on his shoulder and a Bible verse tattooed on his arm. "You two freaks think you can just flaunt this?" Jake sneered, cracking his knuckles. Caleb stepped forward, his heart racing but steady. "Back off, Jake." His voice was calm, but his body hummed with that strange, serum-fueled energy. Jake laughed, shoving Caleb. But Caleb didn't budge. He grabbed Jake's wrist, twisting it just enough to make the bigger boy wince. The others froze, stunned by Caleb's strength. Ethan stepped beside him, ready to fight, but Caleb shook his head. "We're not like them," he whispered. The standoff ended with Jake's crew backing off, but the encounter lit a fire in Caleb. He couldn't stay in Willow Creek, not when every day brought new threats. He and Ethan started planning their escape in earnest, pooling their savings. Caleb's part-time job at the local bookstore barely covered gas, but Ethan's diner tips were adding up. At home, John grew suspicious. He noticed Caleb's confidence, the way he no longer flinched at his father's sermons about sin. One night, John cornered him in the kitchen. "You're different," he said, eyes narrowing. "The serum's working, isn't it?" Caleb laughed bitterly. "It's working, all right. Just not how you wanted." John's face reddened. "You're still chasing that boy." "His name's Ethan," Caleb shot back. "And I'm not chasing him. I love him." The words hung in the air, a challenge John couldn't meet. He stormed out, leaving Caleb with a mix of fear and triumph. But the victory was short-lived. The next day, Caleb found a pamphlet on his beta conversion therapy camp in Alabama. John's handwriting scrawled a note. Last chance. Caleb. Caleb burned the pamphlet in the backyard, the flames licking the night sky. He wasn't going anywhere. But the threat lingered, and he knew John wouldn't stop. At school, Caleb and Ethan faced new challenges. A teacher, Mrs. Hargrove, started singling them out, docking their grades for disruptive behavior when they so much as smiled at each other. The principal, under pressure from John's church, turned a blind eye. Caleb's anger grew, but so did his strength. He started lifting weights at the school gym, not for vanity, but to channel the energy the serum had unleashed. His body responded, muscles growing defined, his stamina endless. Ethan watched, half amazed, half worried. "You're like a superhero," he said one night, tracing Caleb's arm as they lay on a blanket under the stars, hidden in a field outside town. "Or a science experiment," Caleb muttered. Ethan kissed him, soft and sure. "You're still you. That's all I need." But Caleb wasn't so sure. The serum's effects were unpredictable. Some nights, he'd wake drenched in sweat, his heart racing with energy he couldn't burn off. He started researching online, using the library's ancient computers to dig into the clinic John had found. What he uncovered chilled him. The serum was experimental, unapproved, linked to underground labs promising genetic correction. Side effects range from heightened aggression to organ failure. Caleb didn't tell Ethan. He couldn't bear to see fear in those green eyes. Instead, he focused on their plan. They'd leave after graduation, just 3 months away. Atlanta was their beacon, a city where they could blend in, where love didn't come with a target on their backs. But John had other plans. One Sunday, he preached a sermon that shook Caleb to his core. "The devil tempts our children," John thundered, his eyes locked on Caleb in the pews. "But we will save them, by any means necessary." The congregation cheered, oblivious to the threat in his words. That night, Caleb overheard John on the phone, arranging another dose of the serum. "He's fighting it," John said, his voice low. "We need something stronger." Caleb's blood ran cold. He slipped out, running to Ethan's trailer on the edge of town. Ethan held him as he confessed everything to Injection. The changes, the fear. "We'll get through this," Ethan said, his voice steady. "Together." Caleb nodded, but doubt gnawed at him. The serum was changing him, and John was closing in. Time was running out. The air in Willow Creek grew heavier, as if the town itself sensed the storm brewing in Caleb's life. He and Ethan doubled down on their escape plan, meeting in secret at the diner or the old oak grove where no one ventured. But Caleb's body was changing faster now, the serum's effects spiraling beyond muscle and speed. His senses sharpened. Etta could hear whispers across a crowded room, smell rain hours before it fell. It thrilled and terrified him. One afternoon, while shelving books at the bookstore, Caleb overheard a conversation that stopped him cold. Two men, regulars at his father's church, discussed a cleansing planned for wayward youth. Caleb's name came up, tangled with words like intervention and camp. His hands shook as he shelved a copy of Whitman, the poet's words about love and freedom mocking his reality. He told Ethan that night, his voice barely above a whisper as they sat in Ethan's beat-up pickup. "They're coming for me," Caleb said. "My dad's not stopping." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Then we leave now. Screw graduation." Caleb wanted to agree, but fear held him back. The serum was unstable. What if it hurt him? Or worse, Ethan? He needed answers. Using a burner phone Ethan bought, Caleb contacted a scientist who'd left the clinic that produced the serum. Dr. Lena Carter, now in Atlanta, agreed to meet them. She sounded cautious but kind, warning Caleb to avoid more doses at all costs. The drive to Atlanta was a risk, but Caleb's body thrummed with restless energy, urging him to act. Ethan drove, his hand steady on Caleb's knee, the radio playing soft country tunes. Atlanta's skyline was a shock after Willow Creek's sleepy street-style buildings glittering under a pink dusk. Dr. Carter met them in a cramped coffee shop, her gray eyes sharp behind glasses. The serum's a prototype, she explained, her voice low. It was meant to enhance physical traits, but it's wildly unpredictable. Strength, cognition, even emotions, it amplifies everything. Caleb's stomach twisted. Can it be reversed? Carter shook her head. Not easily. But I can run tests. Help you manage it. Ethan squeezed Caleb's hand under the table. What about long-term effects? Unknown, Carter admitted. Some subjects didn't make it. The words hung like a guillotine. Caleb felt Ethan's grip tighten, grounding him. They left with a plan Carter would analyze Caleb's blood, but they had to stay under the radar. John's reach was long, his church's donors connected to powerful people. Back in Willow Creek, tension simmered. Caleb avoided his father, staying late at the bookstore or with Ethan. But John was watching. One night, Caleb came home to find his room ransacked, sketchbooks torn, his journal of love poems to Ethan missing. John stood in the doorway, holding the journal like evidence. You think you can hide from God? John said, his voice low and dangerous. Caleb's pulse surged, the serum amplifying his anger. You're not God, he spat. You're just a man who hates his son. John's hand rose, but Caleb caught it midair, his grip iron-strong. For the first time, John looked afraid. Caleb let go, storming out into the night. At school, the pressure mounted. Jake and his crew escalated their harassment, spray-painting slurs on Ethan's locker. Caleb's newfound strength made him want to fight back, but Ethan urged restraint. We're better than them, Ethan said, cleaning the paint off with shaking hands. But restraint snapped when Jake cornered Ethan alone behind the bleachers. Caleb arrived just as Jake swung a fist. Without thinking, Caleb tackled Jake, pinning him to the ground with ease. The serum roared through him, his strength overwhelming. Jake's friends backed off, fear in their eyes. You okay? Caleb asked Ethan, helping him up. Ethan nodded, but his face was pale. You're scaring me, Cal. Not you just. What's happening to you? Caleb's heart sank. He was protecting Ethan, but at what cost? That night, he dreamed of running, his body unstoppable but alone, Ethan's face fading into the distance. Dr. Carter's tests came back with grim news. The serum was rewriting Caleb's DNA, enhancing him but risking burnout. Your body's like an overclocked engine, she said over a secure call. It could crash. Caleb didn't tell Ethan the worst of it. Instead, he poured his fear into a sketch portrait of Ethan laughing, the diner's neon lights haloing his face. It was his anchor, a reminder of why he was fighting. But John's plans were closing in. One night, Caleb woke to footsteps in the house. He grabbed a backpack stuffed with cash, clothes, and Ethan's sketch and slipped out the window. Ethan was waiting in the pickup, engine idling. They're coming, Caleb said, climbing in. We gotta go. Now. The pickup roared down Highway 16. Willow Creek's lights fading in the rearview mirror. Caleb's heart pounded, not from the serum, but from the weight of leaving everything behind. Ethan's hand rested on his, a silent promise that they'd face whatever came next together. They headed for Atlanta, DR. Carter's lab, their only hope. The road stretched endless under a starless sky, the air thick with the scent of rain. Caleb's body hummed, the serum amplifying every sound, the hum of the engine. Ethan's steady breathing. He felt invincible yet fragile, like a glass statue on the edge of shattering. In Atlanta, Carter's lab was hidden in a nondescript warehouse, its interior a maze of computers and medical equipment. She ran more tests, her face grim as she studied Caleb's blood under a microscope. "It's progressing faster than I thought," she said. "Your cells are hyperactive. You're stronger, faster, but it's taxing your system." Ethan's voice was steady. "How do we stop it?" Carter hesitated. "There's a compound that might stabilize him, but it's experimental and expensive. Caleb's savings wouldn't cover it, and Ethan's tips were barely enough for gas. But Carter offered a deal. She'd fund the treatment if Caleb helped her expose the clinic behind the serum. "They're hurting kids like you," she said. "We can stop them." Caleb agreed, driven by anger at his father and the system that enabled him. But the plan was risky. Carter needed data from the clinic servers, and Caleb's enhanced abilities made him the perfect candidate to infiltrate their facility, a guarded compound in rural Alabama. Ethan hated the idea. "You're not a spy, Cal," he said, pacing the lab's break room. "What if you get caught?" "I'm not letting them do this to anyone else," Caleb said, his voice fierce. "And I need to do this for me." Ethan pulled him close, their foreheads touching. "Then I'm coming with you." The clinic was a fortress, surrounded by barbed wire and cameras. Caleb's heightened senses gave him an edge. He could hear guards' footsteps, spot weak points in the fence. Under cover of night, he and Ethan slipped inside, Caleb's strength making short work of a locked gate. Inside, the air was sterile, reeking of chemicals. Caleb's skin crawled, memories of the syringe flooding back. They found the server room, but alarms blared before Carter could download the data remotely. Guards swarmed, and Caleb's body took over. He moved like a shadow, disarming two men with ease, his muscles fluid and precise. Ethan, no slouch himself, knocked out another with a fire extinguisher. But the victory was fleeting. As they fled, a guard's bullet grazed Caleb's arm. Pain seared through him, but the serum dulled it, keeping him on his feet. Ethan dragged him to the pickup, and they sped away, Carter's voice crackling through a burner phone. "I got the data. You're clear." Back in Atlanta, Carter patched Caleb up, her hands steady but her eyes worried. The compound she'd given him slowed the serum's effects, but it wasn't a cure. "You're stable for now," she said, "but we need to keep monitoring you." Exhausted, Caleb and Ethan crashed in a cheap motel, their bodies tangled on a lumpy mattress. "We did it," Ethan whispered, kissing Caleb's forehead. Caleb smiled, but fear lingered. The clinic was exposed, but John was still out there, and the serum was still in his veins. Back in Willow Creek, John's rage boiled over. The church's donors, spooked by the clinic's exposure, cut ties. His sermons grew frantic, painting Caleb as a lost soul corrupted by the devil. But whispers in the congregation turned against him. Some parents, seeing Caleb's courage, questioned John's methods. Caleb and Ethan stayed in Atlanta, renting a tiny apartment with Carter's help. Caleb's strength ebbed and flowed, some days leaving him bedridden, others making him feel unstoppable. Ethan took a job at a coffee shop, sketching in his spare time, while Caleb worked with Carter to advocate for others harmed by the clinic. One night, as they walked through Atlanta's vibrant streets, Caleb stopped under a streetlight. "I don't know how much time I have," he said, his voice breaking. Ethan cupped his face. "Then we make every second count." They kissed, the city buzzing around them, a world where they could be themselves. But in the back of Caleb's mind, John's shadow loomed. He knew his father wouldn't let go so easily. Months passed in Atlanta, and Caleb's life with Ethan bloomed despite the serum's shadow. Their apartment, cramped but cozy, was filled with Ethan's sketches and Caleb's books, a testament to their stubborn hope. Yet, Caleb's body remained a battleground. Some days he could lift furniture with ease. Others he'd collapse, breathless, as the serum taxed his heart. Dr. Carter's compound kept him stable, but the clinic's exposure had ripple effects. Lawsuits piled up, and Caleb became a reluctant symbol for kids forced into cures. He spoke at rallies, his voice steady despite the stares, his strength a beacon for others. Ethan stood by him, proud but protective, his sketches capturing Caleb's fire. But John wasn't done. One evening, as Caleb and Ethan returned from a rally, they found a letter slipped under their door. John's handwriting was unmistakable. "You can't run from God's will." Attached was a photo of Caleb speaking at the rally, his face circled in red. Caleb's blood ran cold. "He's here," he whispered. Ethan grabbed their burner phone, calling Carter. She urged them to lay low, but Caleb was tired of running. "I need to face him," he said. "For good." Against Ethan's protests, Caleb arranged a meeting with John at a neutral spot, a quiet park on Atlanta's outskirts. Ethan insisted on coming, his presence a steady anchor. Under the park's ancient oaks, John appeared, older but unyielding, his eyes burning with the same zeal that had driven the syringe into Caleb's arm. "You've caused enough trouble," John said, his voice low. "Come home, Caleb. We can fix this." Caleb's laugh was sharp. "Fix me? You broke me, Dad. But I'm still here. Stronger than you ever wanted." John's face twisted. "You're an abomination." The word stung, but Caleb stood tall, the serum's strength pulsing through him. "I'm your son. And I love Ethan. That's not a sin, it's the best part of me." Ethan stepped forward, his hand on Caleb's shoulder. "You don't get to hurt him anymore." For a moment, John wavered, his eyes flickering with something like regret. But he turned away, muttering about salvation, and disappeared into the dusk. Caleb's chest ached not from the serum, but from the finality of it. His father was gone, not just physically, but in every way that mattered. Back in their apartment, Caleb and Ethan rebuilt. The serum's effects lingered, but Carter's treatments gave Caleb hope. He started painting again, his canvases bold with color, capturing the life he and Ethan were building. Ethan's sketches adorned their walls, a gallery of their love. One spring evening, they attended a pride parade, the streets alive with music and color. Caleb, stronger than ever, carried a sign, "Love is my strength." Ethan walked beside him, their hands linked, their smiles defiant. Willow Creek felt like a distant memory, its judgment powerless against their joy. Years later, Caleb stood before a crowd, sharing his story. The serum had left scars. His heart would always be fragile, but it had also given him clarity. He wasn't just a survivor. He was a fighter, forged in pain but defined by love. Ethan, now a graphic designer, sat in the front row, his eyes shining with pride. John never reached out again. Rumors said he'd left Willow Creek, his church dwindling without his fire. Caleb didn't care. He'd found his family in Ethan, in Carter, in the community they'd built. As the sun set over Atlanta, Caleb and Ethan stood on their balcony, the city sprawling below. "We made it," Caleb said, his voice soft but sure. Ethan kissed him, long and deep. "We're just getting started." The serum had tried to break Caleb, to fix what was never broken. Instead, it had made him unbreakable not in muscle, but in spirit. He was Caleb, loved and loving, and that was enough.